Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred We See Died Laughing and I'm here with another weekly wrap up. I got loads of reading done this week, so I'm just going to go straight into it, and as there probably will be no surprise to know that I finished the last two books in the Raven Cycle series by Maggie Stiefvater, which was Blue Lily, Lily Blue and The Raven King. So as you guys know, I did go and meet Maggie Stiefvater on Wednesday, and she was absolutely wonderful. I think she was just on a holiday to Ireland, and the bookstore found out that she was coming over, so they asked if she would be interested in just doing like a signing, because she wasn't really talking about, because obviously it's been a year since The Raven King has been out. Her new book isn't out until October, so she wasn't really talking specifically about like any particular book, but she was just kind of just telling stories about like her writing and just different experiences, like racing against John Green and stuff, like just really funny stories. And she can really, like, know when people talk and you just know why they're a writer, because they're such a good talker, and the way they tell stories like vocally is just, you can see like why they're so good at telling stories on the page as well. And she's just one of these people, and she was absolutely wonderful to meet, and I got my book signed. There was loads of people at the signing. There was like way more than they thought there was going to be, so we could only get 3 books signed. So I got Blue Lily, Lily Blue signed, as you can see there, and I got the Dream Thieves signed because they're my 2 favourite books in this cycle. And then I also got Shiver signed as well, because I was reading that at the time. And seeing as that Shiver is actually the first series that I read of Maggie Stiefvater's, her first book I ever read, so it has kind of like a special place in my heart as well. So I got that signed as well, so I'm really happy to be able to get all them signed. And as I said, she was absolutely wonderful. I read Blue Lily, Lily Blue last year, I think, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think on my reread I maybe didn't love it as much. I probably liked it, maybe it's like a 4.5 stars for me, but I still did really enjoy it. I liked just seeing the character development, as well as after reading the first 2 books, so like all together, I could see the character development for all the characters more so than I was the last time I'd read them all, because there had been such a big gap at that time. So I was really able to see kind of like Adam's character development. As I said, he was really annoying me in the first 2 books, but you can really start to see him grow from this book especially, and then even more so in The Raven King. So he wasn't actually like, he ended up like, you know, redeeming himself a little bit for me, and I was really happy to be able to do that, for him to be able to do that. So I did love Blue Lily, Lily Blue, as I said, probably a 4.5 stars, really strong book for me. And then I gave The Raven King a 4 out of 5 stars. So obviously I can't really talk about what happens in this one because it is the last book. It would be very spoilery. But what I could say is I think I felt like just the ending was probably a little bit anticlimactic for me. I think I was expecting just more. So when it got to that point, then I feel like we were building, and then it just kind of drooped. And so I was just feeling like, oh, like I still enjoyed it, but there was still a kind of like, oh, that's it kind of moment for me. But I still did really enjoy the books, and I'm really eager. She has like another like series, I think, or another trilogy that's going to be all about Ronan, which is one of the reasons I think why she was in Ireland. So I think she was doing kind of research for those books, I think. I'm like so looking forward to the Ronan books, because as you guys know, he's my favourite character, and there were bits in this book that just like had me squealing, like oh my god, like you guys who've read the book will know what those bits were, but I loved them, they were amazing. But as I said, the very end just kind of left me a little bit like, oh okay. But I still did really enjoy the series. As I said, a 4 out of 5 stars, probably the whole series would be a 4 out of 5 stars for me. Like, not my absolutely favourite series of all time, but really strong one and really up there. And seeing as I was on a Maggie Stiefvater kick, I picked up Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater, which was her first, it was a trilogy, and then she brought out kind of a follow-on book, kind of spin-off book, I think last year, the year before. So it is actually a series now, even though like the 4th book isn't like really tied onto the first 3. But this is basically like a werewolf book, and it's about this girl called Grace who, when she was younger, she was attacked by these wolves that live in the woods behind her house. And she remembers being attacked, and she remembers one wolf with yellow eyes kind of getting all the other ones to leave her alone. And she doesn't really remember much more than that. But what she does know is that every year since, every single winter, she knows this wolf, this yellow-eyed wolf, is around her house, and he's kind of like her constant companion in a way, and she feels like really, really connected to him, and she just knows there's like more to it than what she thinks. And then one day she meets a boy called Sam who has yellow eyes, and they have this instant connection, and she knows that he is her wolf. And their kind of relationship like starts off immediately from there, because they already have this really, really deep connection. It is a little bit insta-lovey, like, it is insta-love, but it's insta-love in a way that they have known each other for like 6 years, but he was a wolf in all that time, so like whatever way you want to, I don't know, feel about that. But there's just something about Grace and Sam that is just so lovely. And there's this like, even though like obviously he's a werewolf and he's going through all this like horrible things, there's like an innocence about it that's like a really, really nice, and just a genuine feeling about their relationship. Like they really do love each other, and their love like really comes off the page, and you really believe in it. Like I really believe in them as a couple. Like they're just such a strong couple, and I just love it so much. Like I do really, really love Grace and Sam, and I always have. So this one is like, was probably like a 3.5 stars for me. I think it was a 3 when I originally read it, but my ratings have since changed from then, so it's like a really strong 3.5 now for me, because these are ones I've wanted to reread for a really long time, so I'm really glad I'm finally doing it. And I know this isn't everyone's favourite Stiefvater books. You can definitely see the way her writing has matured and gotten better in the Raven cycle. So this is really like her starter books. So the writing isn't as like descriptive and isn't as flowery as you would see in the Raven cycle, but it's still really, really beautiful, and it's still quite strong, especially for like first books, even if the whole werewolf story just reeks of Twilight. But there are differences in it, that it's a werewolf story that can stand on its own. The next book I read was one of the library books I had out, and it was The Comet Seekers by Helen Sedgewick. This is kind of a strange book. This is kind of set around two people called Francois and Roisin. Francois is American, I think he is, and then Roisin is Irish, obviously, and it's basically about like every single chapter is based around this comet, these different comets, and it's saying like it's going from the time that the two of them were small, and it's kind of gradually going up to when they finally meet each other, and all these different things that are going on with their lives. And there's kind of like a magical realism element to this story as well. And to be honest, there's not a whole lot I can say about this. This was kind of one of those middle of the road books for me, where I was kind of into the story, but I was mostly reading it, like by the time I got halfway through, I was mostly reading it just to be able to finish it. Like it wasn't bad enough that I would DNF it, but it wasn't amazing enough that I think that it will stand out in my mind for a long time. Like I say, in a few months, if someone was to ask me to describe like everything that happened in this book, I probably wouldn't be able to tell them. It's probably not one that will stick with me for a while. And I'm a bit disappointed, because I did expect a lot more, because this is a book that's caught my eye so many times, and so I don't know, I just feel like a tiny bit disappointed in it. I was just expecting something more, but yeah, it was okay. It wasn't fantastic, it wasn't bad, it was just in the middle, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished was The Last Illusion by Rhys Bowen, which is the 9th Molly Murphy mystery series books. Obviously I read this in audiobook, like I've read almost all of the other Molly mystery books, and this one is basically where Molly is. She is now getting ready for a big event in her life, and she goes to a illusionist show, and while she is there, a trick goes wrong and a girl ends up being sawed almost in half, and then the illusionist that performed the trick, even though he said he was innocent, he ends up disappearing the next day, as well as the girl's body. So Molly ends up obviously becoming intrigued with this, but then she is employed by Harry Houdini's wife to look after Harry Houdini, who is also in this show, because his wife feels like someone is out to get him, and she wants Molly to be around him all the time to see if there's anyone suspicious around, and to try and kind of protect him from anyone who might be planning things against him. So this is kind of how Molly kind of gets into this, but so many things happen in this book. Like there's so many different kind of things happening all at once. I actually felt a bit like I wasn't as intrigued with this book as I had been with the other ones for like the first half, and I was kind of like, okay, like it felt like there wasn't that much like being revealed, there wasn't that much going on. I felt like Molly was taking a really long time to really get to the bottom of things. There were no answers. And as a reader, that can get really frustrating because we like to have little tidbits, and it seemed like even the tidbits we were getting weren't really leading anywhere. But then halfway through, things start happening, and Molly is employed by another person who ends up like, it's just a really, really interesting, like, it was just a really, really interesting way of getting the story moving again, and for new information to come to light and stuff like that. And I really, really loved that. And obviously I don't want to say too much because it would be spoilers, but I did end up enjoying, like, I've said the first half of this book was like a 3.5 stars, where the second half of the book was like a 4 stars for me. So I gave it like a 3.5 stars overall, but I did really, really enjoy it. The last book I read was a non-fiction book, and it was The Kingdom of Women, Life, Love and Death in China's Hidden Mountains by Choo Hong. And this is, as I said, a non-fiction book, and it's about the author Choo Hong's life. She basically travelled to China, and she found out about this kind of tribe of Chinese people called the Mosuo people, and they live in this particular kind of lake mountainous area in China, and they are one of the last matrilineal, I don't know how to say that word, societies, which is basically where instead of families being followed through the male bloodline, it's followed through the female bloodline. So instead of the man, like the eldest man in the house being like the head of the household, it's actually the eldest woman. So the grandmother in a lot of these houses that she like visits, the grandmother is like head of the household, and they don't really like marry each other. They have like lovers and stuff. They can have long-term lovers or like short-term lovers, and the women will have children, but the men don't really act a lot of the time. Like there are some people and families that do, but a lot of the time the men actually don't have that much to do with their children, because they don't live, like they wouldn't move in with their lovers or with a woman who is like their long-term partner. They stay with the women of their family. So any males in a household would generally be uncles and wouldn't be like husbands or boyfriends or anything. They'd all be like uncles and brothers and stuff like that, rather than, you know, so a child growing up, their male influences would be their uncles and their brothers rather than their father, and it's kind of like this whole thing that the child belongs to the mother because the mother brings them life. And it was just really interesting like thing to read about, and it was really easy to read as well. It wasn't a particularly like long book, but and the author was obviously there, and she like lived, like she ended up like building her own house in this area, and really getting to know the community, and she kind of becomes godmother to all these children, and eventually she kind of becomes known as like the godmother of the entire village and the godmother of all the Mosuo people, through her actions, through some charitable actions that she does. And it was just really like interesting to hear her point of view, and she was able to really like contrast the Mosuo way of life with typical Chinese way of life, in particular the way the women are treated. So she was able to see how like the women like were treated by the menfolk in the Mosuo tribe, and talk about how like there were still some areas of China and some like particular ways of life in China where a woman wouldn't even be able to eat at the same time as a man, and she wouldn't even be able to eat a full meal, but she'd have to eat whatever the men leave behind on the table. So like they're literally just eating the leftovers. So there was just like this huge contrast that she was able to talk about, and I really enjoyed that, because not many other like people like people from like say like the UK or Europe wouldn't be able to go and live with these people and really compare them to the way of normal Chinese life. Now, Choo Hong is originally from Singapore, so she's not actually from China, but she obviously spent a very long time in China, and like knows Chinese culture as well as Singaporean culture, so she was able to compare the two like pretty well. But I was just really, I don't know, it just really interests me, this whole society, and just the way they lived and the way they all worked together. I really like enjoy just learning about it. She did kind of end the book like kind of talking about how with today's like modern society, how things are starting to change, and how some of the older traditions aren't being upheld as much by the younger generation, where, you know, some people are getting married, you know, they're not doing the typical like, you know, taking a lover kind of thing, and they are doing things like more traditionally Chinese. So she kind of ended like that, and saying how like just like, you know, like alcohol and drugs and stuff are starting to come into this kind of like this area, and like these villages and stuff like that, and how you have to kind of go even more like rural now to see Mosuo people who are very traditional. And I just kind of felt like it was kind of like a bummer to end on, because you'd read like all these beautiful ways of life, and then you're like, you just suddenly get this bit at the end where it's like, well, like it's not really like this anymore because, you know, modern day society is just awful and everything's changing. And I just didn't like that it decided to end on that. I would have liked to have ended it on like one of the other chapters and maybe have had that chapter in the middle, the way things were changing. I don't know, I just felt like it was just a bit of a downer to end on. So I did really enjoy this though, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I do really recommend it for people who are looking for just an interesting non-fiction book to read, because this is definitely something that I'd never heard of. I didn't know anything about the Most Suo people. This is just something I found on NetGalley. I should have said that at the start, this was a NetGalley book. And it just sounded really interesting, and it was really interesting. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it for anyone who is just looking for something different to read. So that is everything that I've read this week. Please let me know what you guys think of all these books, if you've read any of them, if you want to read any of them, what you're reading right now, because I would love to know. And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!